Thomas. What's so wonderful to me is I'm coming from the design background with a little bit of damage in development, is that the QSs have such a wonderfully important role to play in this conversation. We often think as designers it's just design, and as investors it's just where we place money, but the profession of the QS, both of you are QSs by profession, right? And I'm seeing such a wonderful future for the QS evaluative thinking mind in BIM. And when we meet when we bring those professions together, I think that's what the community is going to offer to South Africa. So I'd like to invite our second speaker for the day. I'd like to invite Melvern Govender from the city of Cape Town, also a QS. Right? And I'd like him to explain to us at a municipal level, at the city level, how they're thinking about better information management in the built environment. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. Can have the
yes, Letitia will give you the 5 minutes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Melvern Govender, and this session highlights the city of Cape Town's evolution towards BIM integration. To give you a brief intro about myself, I'm a professional quantity surveyor with over a decade of experience in managing a wide range of projects. What does BIM mean to the city of Cape Town? I was asked this question last year and I was so confused. Surely BIM means the same thing no matter where in the world you are. And it got me thinking. Perhaps people have different perspectives on what BIM means to them. So let's start at the beginning. BIM is the management of information throughout the whole life cycle of a built or infrastructure asset. Even the term BIM is debated. Building information modeling, yes, no, better information management. To me, it's irrelevant. What's important is what BIM stands for, and that is, in your design phase, you can conduct analysis and simulation. In the construction phase, you can deliver more projects on time and within budget. And in your maintenance phase, you can reuse building models and optimize your resources. But why is it important? Why should it matter? Surely as a consultant, you can just keep doing things the way you've been doing, even if it's not efficient. Well, yes, you can. But are you doing it in the best interest of yourself? No, you aren't. To make matters worse, the rise in oil prices has made filling our tanks cost a near fortune. This has also inflated the cost of projects, but closer to our hearts and our homes, load shedding has crippled the economy. I was told the one way to see a booming economy was to look up at the number of cranes in the sky. If you drove around the city, how many cranes do you see? It doesn't look promising. We may not be able to reduce the cost of oil, but we can adapt to change. Let me tell you a story about one of my first projects, fresh out of campus. I was employed as a QS at BKS Engineering. We were then bought by AECOM, who also bought Davis Langdon. But back to my story, I was working for a predominantly engineering company and a small team of 4 QSs, which meant we had to manage a bulk of the work. We were constantly under pressure. In fact, our theme song was Under Pressure by Queen. At this point, I knew very little, and I had to work on the Mercedes-Benz W205 body shop. This was a 200 million rand employer design contract in which the client, Mercedes-Benz, appointed Stephanie Stocks as the main contractor. The client had a bit of a reputation, but I wasn't client-facing, I was behind the scenes, so I thought I have nothing to worry about. That was until the client came to our offices and questioned the numbers. I was called into the meeting to explain the numbers, and I could feel the tension in the air. I thought, what if I can't explain? What happens then? Will the client go after our professional indemnity insurance? What happens if that happens? Will I be fired from the company? Luckily, none of this happens. It turns out that there was an external QS who had estimated a small portion of the work, and that's where the client had the most number of questions. I managed to find what the client was looking for in the meeting, but that was my first taste on how fast you could lose a client if they lost their trust in you. One of the things I learned for working for a client like Mercedes was that if they were paying for professional services for an architect, engineer, QS, etc., then they should have expected that and nothing less. We shouldn't have been scrambling around in front of the client looking for information. There should have been a better way to manage that information. I just wasn't aware of it at the time. Fast forward several years later, and I'd worked on other car manufacturing plants such as Toyota, Volkswagen, and BMW. So at this point, I thought I had seen it all, but I was wrong. These previous projects were all based on your typical employee design contract, but the Mercedes-Benz F16 body shop expansion decided to adopt BIM. This was a 1 billion rand turnkey project in which the client appointed Stephanie Stocks again, but the client also insisted on using the FIDIC contract, but the client's legal team had changed so many contract clauses that the contractor needed a legal expert to look at the risks of agreeing to this contract. It was supposed to just be the client, Mercedes-Benz, in a direct relationship with the contractor, Stephanie Stocks. But the client had also appointed a design review team from AECOM. The contractor, who already had their in-house managers, QSs, engineers, had appointed WSP Engineering as their design team. Myself as a QS from MLC, I had moved from AECOM to MLC at this point, and they were subcontractors. Now, this isn't the full picture. This is just to give you an idea of the complexity of the role players involved. Even though I was a consultant QS, I was now employed by the contractor, and it was eye-opening to be on the other side of the table and have to fight on behalf of the contractor. And when I say fight, what I mean is the client introduced changes or variations, but wasn't willing to pay the contractor, so I had to fight for what was fair. What is also challenging about this project was that it was a fully operational site that was still producing cars, and it could not be stopped. And the contractor had to work around the tight schedule to ensure that the new body shop was ready in time to start producing the next generation of Mercedes-Benz cars. From a design point of view, I have never been involved in a project that didn't have clashes between mechanical, your fire, your wet services. But what is more challenging was that this project had conveyors, overhead cranes, and robots, and everything needed to be coordinated. The solution was to use BIM, and it was a success. BIM ensured that the contractor was working to the latest drawings and that the project was efficient as possible. I had a front row seat of seeing the pros of using BIM as compared to previous projects that didn't use BIM. What are the key drivers for BIM adoption? Asset information for asset management systems. We want all information, including all required metadata, to ensure that we avoid manual loading. Any information that's manually loaded runs the risk of being lost at a later stage, so we would like to try and avoid that. Effective engagement with stakeholders, leading to there would be more immersed public engagement, and not everyone can look at a 2D drawing and imagine what it looks like on site. So visualization helps. Cost saving in design and construction. There would be better design coordination. As the City of Cape Town pays the consultants on a rate per hour, there should be less rework, essentially leading to reduced project cost. Time and quality control in construction. There would be effective construction monitoring. You could also review the quality and progress on site against the digital model. Reproducibility. The City of Cape Town produces the same things, and if there are standards in place, this would make it a lot more efficient. And provide leadership in BIM adoption. The industry is looking for leaders in BIM, and the City of Cape Town wants to be proactive and adopt BIM. What are the risks of not adopting BIM? inability to utilize technology and data analytics to improve asset creation and management. We would be limited by our data. Increased manual data handling in an ever-digitalizing world. This increases the cost of resources and the cost of projects. Being out of sync with the construction industry players. If the private sector chooses to adopt BIM and we don't, we run the risk of our projects costing a lot more than it needs to. Increased building lifecycle costs. Lifecycle costs are often forgotten about or ignored altogether, and this has a huge impact on the asset cost to the city. And missing the R4 bus. We don't want to be left behind. What is the history of BIM adoption in the city of Cape Town? There's an innovation unit in the city, which I'm a part of, and one of our projects is the rollout of BIM across the city. We then developed a BIM concept note, which was approved in November 2021. We then drafted a BIM roadmap and an implementation framework. We also got together a working group and a steering committee, and we issued the roadmap and implementation framework for review and comment to the group. We also engaged with United Kingdom Trade and Invest, who offered to assist the city of Cape Town roll out BIM. The United Kingdom Trade and Invest then appointed Catapult, who also appointed Arup from their local and London offices. And we then set up in-person workshops with the working group and steering committee. And I think this slide is slightly cut, but we also presented to the executive management team earlier this year. So we're just waiting for approval on the implementation framework and roadmap. What are the key internal and external stakeholders? It's the internal departments. The working group is from within our department, and they will compile any necessary documentation and templates for BIM. And the steering committee are representatives from the various departments listed on the slide. City leadership, we need buy-in from our executive management team, but we also need a BIM champion. Consultants, we are going full steam ahead with our BIM rollout, so we need the consultants to be on board, else the BIM ship will grind to a halt. And contractors, we need contractors to be on board as well as provincial and national government. Are there any key external drivers for change? The Integrated Development Plan speaks to a capable and collaborative city government. The National Development Plan, which speaks to building a capable and development state. The Data Strategy of 2023. The ISO 55000 Asset Management Standards, which also ties in to CIDMS, Cities Infrastructure Delivery Management System, and ISO 19650, as well as the National BIM Policy, which is currently in progress. This is a map of the open BIM standards and mandates, and as you can see, there's nothing in Africa. And our hope is that South Africa will be the first to have a BIM mandate. This is the roadmap that was developed. It was initially a 10-year roadmap, but we thought we'll challenge ourselves and do it in half the time. We split it into streams of leadership and governance, where we look at establishing a BIM committee, pilot projects, and working towards a digital twin. Your standards and protocol stream, which is looking at reviewing your BIM standards and compiling any BIM templates. The technology enablement stream, which looks at assessing your current data infrastructure and integrating your GIS platform as an example. Skills and resources, where we looked at assessing the skills in the city and providing any necessary training based on the assessment. And finally, an awareness and recognition stream. And this is where we looked at compiling a strategic branding plan and also establishing a reward and recognition scheme in the city for utilizing BIM. This is a zoomed in version of the roadmap. What we're also looking at in the standards and protocol stream is that every 2 years we'll review these standards to ensure that we're working with the latest standards. And in the technology enablement stream, we also looked at procuring and setting up a common data environment and expanding our data capturing. This is the implementation framework, or a snippet of the implementation framework that was drafted. And what we did was we took each activity on the roadmap and drafted a sequence of steps or things that need to be considered. For example, if you were in the working group in the data and technology stream, and you had to assess the current data infrastructure in the city, where would you even start? The implementation frameworks identifies or gives you things to consider, such as identifying your stakeholders, defining your assessment goals, reviewing existing documentation, and so on. This is the progress to date, and what I've done is I've just taken the roadmap and highlighted in green activities or tasks that are complete or in draft stage. And as you can see, we're in July, and there's quite a lot of work or ground that's been covered, and we're hoping to carry the same momentum forward. And who knows, maybe 5 years would be possible after all. These are just some of the photos from the BIM workshop. There was not a lot of ground that we could cover in 3 days, but what is important was having the steering group and the working committee in the same room and having their undivided attention. We often tend to work in silos in our various departments, so it is important to have everyone in the same room to help steer the ship towards a common goal. Some of the BIM workshop key areas that we looked at was, well, we had Catapult who came in, and they had assisted in the rollout of BIM across 27 countries, none of which are in Africa, just by the way. And we looked at the key drivers for BIM adoption, asking why to achieve organizational outcome, or so what to get to the root of the problem. Some of the key issues that we identified was data collaboration and sharing, which provided the evidence we needed to continue on our BIM journey. We also looked at the impact versus difficulty of action graph, and this, we're currently looking at a pilot project in the city, and this graph helped us refine our choice for a pilot. And the framework for change, or diamond graph, which I'll touch on shortly, and that was looking at communicating your vision, public leadership, collaborative framework, and growing your industry capacity. This was the framework for change graph, and this is purely an example. You can take your organization and you can score it from 0 to 10 based on these various points, and you should more or less end up with a diamond graph. In this example, what it's saying is that we shouldn't just focus on building a collaborative framework and public leadership, but ignore communication and growing your industry. There should be a balanced approach with the end result of growing your industry capacity. We recently hosted an engineering technical forum, and one of the questions we asked was, does information work for you, and why? And it was interesting that an overwhelming majority said, no, information doesn't work for us. There needs to be a change in the process or the way that information is managed. One of the things I grappled with was, how do we convince people to adopt BIM? There are 35,000 employees in the city of Cape Town, and I imagine that the small portion of that is technical staff. How do we convince someone who's been stuck in their ways for the last 20 years to adopt BIM? Or even more challenging, how do we convince the public who just want a service to be delivered to adopt BIM? I think the question is, how do you convince someone who may not be technical to adopt BIM? And I struggled with this until the facilitator brilliantly put it as 7 clinics for the price of 5 in the BIM workshop. And I thought, what better way to show the benefits of BIM than to show what it means in terms of service delivery? But it also got me thinking ways that I could convince the water department as an example. If we looked at a key driver for BIM, and in this example it would be better design, and we kept asking, so what? It would mean less rework. If there's less rework, you should have savings. We already know that our executive directors in the city have reduced budget to meet KPIs. You could use, which means there also should be a shelved projects, and you could use some of the savings from less rework to fund one of these shelved projects. And in this case, if a shelved project is a water treatment plant, it would mean BIM equals more water. I'd like to close with one of my favorite quotes. The price of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it. Let me say that again. The price of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it. Our salary is in exchange for our time. Whatever we buy, whether it's a car, a house, new clothes, the money we pay for it can be seen as the life we exchange for it. We may question the cost of BIM without fully understanding or appreciating the benefits. We are, after all, creatures of habit. If we've been doing the same thing for years, using the same construction technology, 2D drawings, a filing system we understand, then we tend to avoid anything new and unfamiliar. We are trying to go the extra mile by adopting BIM in the city of Cape Town, and our hope is that the industry will follow suit. Thank you.
So unfortunately, Melvern has to fly out, but he's done such a great job in being on time, and I'm sure there's a couple of questions. So if there's any questions from the audience you'd like to ask him right now, please do so. He has a flight to attend to, and we'd like him to serve you as much as possible. Any questions for the city of Cape Town?
Hi. Hi. I just want to ask, in future, do you think that BIM could be a part of like regional spatial development frameworks and things like that? Or, because I saw that you had like a BIM framework, so is it going to be another, I mean, yeah, I've mentioned many times I'm doing town planning, but there's often so many frameworks, so many policies and all those things that don't mean a lot, because you have all these frameworks but nothing really happens because of the implementation phase that just, yeah, that kind of slacks behind. Point I'm making is, would it be a part of, are you guys looking towards putting it inside these like regional spatial development frameworks and all these, yeah, frameworks, or what is the plan, the future plan, in terms of BIM, in terms of like policy and legislation? Are you looking at that, or is it not? Is it just an added?
I thought I showed the plan. Maybe you missed it. Look, it's the plan is that we've got an implementation framework and a roadmap that I presented to the executive management team. We need their approval, but that is a city plan, so it's across the various departments and directorates. There's not going to be a separate plan for spatial planning or water or energy. This is one plan for the entire city. And I'm leading the BIM project currently, and we're already on our next steps. Even though we've presented the implementation framework for approval, we have already started the process of getting pipeline projects, and one of the pipeline or pilot projects is looking at digitalization of the stadium, and we've got a few projects in water and in the energy space as well. So we're going full steam ahead.
Other questions?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to ask, I think with the speaker, I think Thomas before, and with you as well, it kind of resonates in the context of how I understand BIM to be in the platform of BIM 3D to BIM 10D, where there's different platforms of how BIM would begin and how it would end, and obviously continue within its life cycle. How do you identify yourself within that structure of what BIM 3D and 10D is? And I think with the last phrase that you put up, it also looks at the aspect of what construction economics. How I look at it is that if you as a client would purchase an incandescent light bulb compared to an LED light bulb, it looks at the life cycle of how long can that light bulb last compared to an LED light. And obviously looking at an incandescent light is like 10 Rand, and then an LED light being like 20 Rand. So how do you structure in terms of what BIM 10D is and within what the project life cycle of construction economics?
So it's very difficult to answer that question, because it depends on the needs of the guys sitting in the various departments. Someone sitting in water running a wastewater plant may just need BIM 3D. Whereas someone who's constructing houses, maybe they want BIM 5D and bring in the cost element or project management element into it. So I think it's very difficult to answer you, but I think it's really dependent on the various departments. And what is your second question again? Can you please repeat that?
I think I was just giving a sort of an example or comment based on looking at the life cycle within the context of what you explained that is quite difficult, where, as an example, where you look at the aspects of a light bulb, the life cycle of an incandescent light bulb compared to a life cycle of a LED light, meaning that even if though a incandescent light bulb would be cheaper, but its life cycle is not as long as compared to an LED. So that would obviously force you now to pay more for an incandescent light where you will only pay a certain amount for an LED light that will last longer. So there's just sort of a comment to sort of lead to try and understand if what I'm explaining with what BIM 3D is and 10D, and trying to explain to us as individuals how BIM would align in the context of the built environment.
So I'm going to help with that question a bit. Melvern's role is in information management at a city scale. And BIM 3D to 10D is about the use case of the project and the business case of the project. So every use case and business case is unique to that project. And if we're talking 3D, 7D, whatever D, it's a business case argument, not necessarily a technology and information case argument. So I think that would help in that distinction. And the SANS 19650 will help you establish what is the business case, level information need, level of detail, and the argument that you're going to deliver for that BIM execution process. So I think if you want to do that kind of question and answer, start with why. Why are we BIMing? What will we be BIMing for? And what is the outcome and purpose of the BIM project? I think that will help a bit more in answering that question. Is there any other questions for the City of Cape Town before we let him travel back?
No questions from the City of Cape Town.
Come on, City of Cape Town to City of Cape Town. Let's do it.
No, it was more comments just to assist in terms of the spatial planning and how it fits in with what Melvern has done. So the City of Cape Town is also one of the metro municipalities that done a municipal spatial development framework and a district development framework. So that works into the BIM and the work that Melvern is doing. So that will enhance in terms of the GIS and all of the data that goes with it. So one should not forget that BIM is not something that we adapt as a new technology. It is to see what we're currently doing. It's about data-driven information, which make us more effective and efficient. So in terms of that, I think the city is going in the right direction in trying to prove all the stuff that I think that Richard and the team this morning have expressed and put it in actual implementation. I think Melvern have highlighted gratefully that there is an implementation framework for BIM. So that doesn't mean that we're adapting a new technology or we're bringing BIM into the city. It means it's an adoption of what we're doing, and we have an implementation that we have of a whole strategy of how we're going to achieve to adopt BIM, basically to help the industry a little bit better.
Thank you very much. Would you like to respond? Are you happy?
I don't think I could have said it better. Thank you.
Fine, and then we'll do the final question and we'll release you to the wild after that. Thank you very much.
Okay, so this might be a little bit more lighthearted, but from you personally, starting out as a QS, going through this process, can you maybe just list some of the areas that you had to expand into and learn about and maybe upskill or get some better understanding? For example, I'm from an architectural point of view and I'm starting to feel like I need to go do all new IT degree or something to understand what we need to do. Maybe from your perspective, just give us some ideas of what you've also learned along the way or expanded into.
Okay, so just because I said I was under pressure, you don't have to feel under pressure as well. I think you don't need, I don't have any other degrees. It's really just QS degree and a few others, but it's not really in the built environment space. I think what's important, and this was covered yesterday and earlier today as well, is that you need to be driven. Someone mentioned that they've got 2 employees who don't even have a matric, and yet they're excelling in the IT space. I think that goes a long way. If you're studying architecture, I don't think you need necessarily additional degrees, especially if they're not really available currently. I think there's still debate about what we should be offering at campuses. I think as long as you're driven, as long as you do the research, I think that's good enough, and you have the right exposure. So I think just reading the theory about BIM isn't quite the same as opposed to working on a project that actually utilizes BIM. Does that answer your question?
If you may allow me to add on to that, because I did get a couple of conversations around. You always talk about attitude, but we want direction in terms of upskilling. So to add to that, how technology can enhance and how you can identify what kind of trainings you need is to say, in my function as an architect, what is it that I need to deliver? And then the second part to that is to say, what type of technologies exist that can aid in the delivery of this exercise that you need to do? There is a course, or not a course as such, but for QSs, there's a course that is called Measurement and Design Appraisal. Another part to that for all practitioners is to say, do you do technology appraisal for the functions that you deliver as a practice? And that would be a one step to identifying the type of technologies you need exposure to. If I'm a construction manager and I need to do scheduling, how do I identify what training I need? What apps exist that do construction scheduling? And you will find an ample. What exists within the firm that I'm part of or the school that I'm part of that gives you access to a technology that you don't have to pay but is already within the system? And that would be an easy starting point. But then to add to that is, all right, does the firm actually have the best application to deliver this function efficiently? Then that is something you bring forward to the team to say, we do have this software, but it's actually not the best in the game. Then you train on whatever then the senior managers would invest in. So it is not a definite process to say, Melvern can direct you to an application. That would be unfair. Tomorrow the applications changes. Another more efficient application is introduced, whereas today we had directed you to training 1, 2, 3. It's a continuous development where you look at the technologies as they are being upgraded, and it's discussions within firms and practices and schools to say, what do we have access to so that we can train for what we have and we can budget for future efficient systems. Thank you.
Thank you very
Cool.
much.
Thank you.
And thank you for your time and thank you for your questions. Have a safe flight.
Cool, thank you.